Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
And I'm Dr. Mark Davini. Welcome all.
Today's podcast, is there a code for that, Doc?
I hope so. But we know better than that.
We're talking about whether you can bill for every single thing you do in the office. You know, I'll say this. As a biller, we know the mantra. I'm going to remind everyone of my mantra. The doctor treats the patient. The billing person treats the claim. Whenever you flip-flop that, you do run into potential issues with perhaps overcoding, fraud.
Oh, and
You name it.
and let's be clear up front too that when we get questions from doctors where we talk about services and their statement comes back, I can't do that because they won't pay for it.
Yeah. Do you have to get me all started right away?
I know, right away. Fired you right up on that one, right?
Listen, so, there used to be this thought that, if I rendered it, I have to report it. Now, when I say report, as a biller, I'm talking about putting a code on a claim. But really, I think what they're trying to say or should be saying, clarified, is you document what you've done. That is 100%. You don't not document something
right
that you've done.
Always document what you do. Document.
Whether that actually appears on a claim is a different story. And that's what we're going to unpack today.
Right, because people sometimes equate the two. That I can't do it because I can't bill for it. Or if I can't bill for it, I don't put it in my notes. And all those statements are just wrong. You always write what you do and you bill what you're allowed.
So the question is, well, how do I know, right? Well, education is part of that. I unlike you, Dr. Davini, I'm on social media. And
what's that?
Yeah, exactly. I'm part of these groups that are, these groups, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever, LinkedIn. And they're sort of like support groups. There's like ones for different EHRs or just coding in general. And when I see some of the questions, I'm like, those are good questions or maybe even simple questions. But then I see the answers. And the answers sometimes
make you cringe.
They do, because I'll give you sort of a general. I'm not getting paid for this code. What modifier can I use to get paid? And then I'll see a series of answers. Most are correct as far as the modifier will help you get past the NCCI edit to get you paid. But never is this is the modifier and this is what it means. Make sure that you're coding the service correctly versus from what was rendered. So there's a goal here of getting paid, but compliance is sometimes lost in a lot of these groups.
And also clinical integrity. If the patient needs the service, the patient needs the service. Someone will pay for that service. It will be either the patient or their insurance. But because their insurance doesn't cover it, doesn't necessarily negate the need for the service clinically. And too often that's the decision made readily. Well, the insurance doesn't pay for it, I'm not going to do it. Well, then it begs the question, well, did they need it in the first place? If you could accomplish the goal without it, why are you doing it? And then their answer might be something like, oh, because it makes it better, faster, whatever. I said, but you can do it without it. So your responsibility is to do only those services that are necessary, not services that are paid for.
Yeah, so I want to sort of preface our continued conversation by saying I make the assumption that medical necessity was established and the documentation was complete. So then we can talk about this stuff a little
right. And
more
that's the
generally.
working model right now. All services we talk about are necessary, and we're just determining whether or not it's a billable service to insurance. It's always billable. It's either the patient or insurance.
So insurance companies sometimes will make these decisions for you. They will do what's called bundling. So they'll take 2 codes and they'll reimburse you for just the primary procedure. In chiropractic, that's typically the adjustment. And they'll claim that they've bundled it, meaning those 2 services really weren't reportable separately. And so we're just going to pay for the primary and you have to eat it on the second service. That's
happens too often.
Yeah. And sometimes it happens because there's a lack of education, meaning you've done something correctly, but the modifier or modifiers that go onto a CPT code weren't there, or the wrong ones were there. And so, sometimes you get these member questions like, well, I've been using this modifier forever and now it's not working. It's like, well, the modifier you've been using forever was wrong in the first place. Now the insurance company has caught up on the edit. And so now you're saying, well, now I'm not getting paid. There's a problem. Well, the problem started when you reported something incorrectly. So let's back up a second and say, what is a modifier? Just to bring everyone to the same knowledge base, right? So a modifier is either an alpha or numeric code or codes that get added to a service code. Classic examples. 25 modifier. The 25 goes on an exam code when you're adjusting on the same day to tell the insurance company this was an exam. This was not part of my pre-adjustment analysis before I adjusted. This is a full-blown exam. Here's the 25. That's a classic example of a modifier. So gone are the days typically where you can put a brief exam with an adjustment and say, well, the brief exam was my pre-adjustment analysis. No. That used to be very popular in certain states with workers' comp and other things. But that's gone. So
it's gone. Yeah. It's gone. Gone.
Yeah. So,
all gone.
And as funny as it is, there are funny codes, especially ICD-10. There's very funny codes out there that there's an ICD-10 code for like everything. You know what I mean? Like I lost my car keys. There's an ICD-10 code for that, right? Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, because now that becomes an issue about getting well. I had to walk.
But sometimes we'll get these questions. And it's like, well, I talked to a patient for a couple of minutes, and is there a billing code for that? It's like, well, what did you do? Well, it really sounded like it was part of the exam, or report of findings is probably the biggest one. Well, like they come back the second day for report of findings. Is there a code that I can bill for that? No. It's part of the exam that happened the day before. It's part of your outcome, your finding, your education, your informed consent. I'd love if there was an ROF code,
right?
But there isn't.
Right. And it's probably a point to be made that not every service you provide has a code. It's that simple. They don't all have codes that exactly describe what you do, number one. I said, number two, there may be codes out there that describe something you do that are not within either your scope of practice or within the carrier's contract to pay. And then probably the last operating point here is to recognize that just because they paid the bill doesn't mean the bill was accurate.
Anybody who's been around long enough knows that, because they've probably experienced a clawback from the insurance company saying, well, now I'm going to take a look at what we prospectively paid you. Let me see your notes. Nope, you didn't bill that correctly 50% of the time. I want half the money we paid over the last 3 years back from you.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you hear somebody say, well, I've been doing this forever and getting paid? And it's like, you have to remember the only thing you send to an insurance company is a claim. They're assuming everything on that claim is accurate and truthful until such a time that maybe they request your notes and then compare your notes to the claim and find out that what you were billing for should not have been billed. And that's when the clawbacks happen.
So let's dig into a few of these service codes, because, actually we did a whole episode just on manual therapy techniques, because that has been such the bane of my existence since it ever came into play. But
and so wrong.
There's others out there, and here's where I find some irony, and where the system is broken, in my opinion. So AMA, American Medical Association, owns and operates in CPT, which is a registered trademark for the service codes that we all use. Also, the federal government, through their National Correct Coding Initiative, is likes to weigh in. So the federal government likes to weigh in on how you would report codes and when. And they have these what's called NCCI, or National Correct Coding Initiative, edits. It's really binary. It's 0 and 1, believe it or not. It's binary, because if you have two codes that you're looking at in the NCCI table and they have zeros, you can't report those together. But if they have a 1,
Period.
Yeah. If you have a 1, you can. I mean, it's literally, it's binary code. It's kind of funny. So I don't know. I guess I'm the only one that cares about that. But I like it. So, but what I don't like.
There's something there, but I'll just let it go.
Yeah, I know. So we only have so much time. So
that's right.
What I find interesting is that the resource we all start with is AMA CPT, right? And there's like ChiroCode Desk Book and other resources out there. AAPC puts out books that basically reiterate the full AMA CPT, or they consolidate it for their particular profession. What I find very interesting, and not in a great way, unfortunately, is that codes like neuromuscular reeducation and massage therapy, those two codes in AMA CPT, says you can report those with the chiropractic adjustment, and you can perform them on the same anatomical site, and they're billable.
Wow, that's good.
Right. That's great. But then the National Correct Coding Initiative has their own 2 cents, and they say, no, actually, we're going to lump neuromuscular reeducation and massage with manual therapy techniques and put the anatomical site restriction, which means if you adjust in that anatomical site and you perform neuromuscular reeducation, massage, or manual therapy techniques in that same anatomical site you adjusted, you cannot report or bill those 2 codes.
So who do I listen to?
Well, I would love to listen to AMA because that gives us more billable codes. But most carriers, of course, are going to not just adopt AMA CPT. They're going to adopt the NCCI edits on top of that. Because why? Because it helps their bottom line. Does it help the patient? Well, I love when carriers will say, well, none of our policies are supposed to affect patient quality of care and what you do.
Of course not.
Doctor, we don't want to interfere with how you service that patient, but we're just not going to pay for how you service that patient.
Which means that a lot of times, if not most times, patients will choose against expensive services that they cannot afford.
Or the doctor, especially newer docs, I say less seasoned doctors, have the mentality you just said. I can't do that. You can't do that because the insurance company won't recognize that that's a billable code. Or you can't do that because now you're deciding that you are letting their reimbursement policies influence your patient care. What is it?
I mean, to be clear, you can do anything within the scope of your practice within your state and license, period.
Yeah.
Now, not everything you do may be reimbursable.
By the insurance carrier.
By the insurance carrier.
But there's non-covered service waiver forms. We provide nice templates. A lot of carriers have their own template and tell you how you use those to, guess what? Make the patient responsible for payment.
And this is a concept that I think a lot of people have to embrace more. It started out that way, that everybody was cash. There was no insurance. Insurance came into play and it covered everything. And then insurance started restricting what they were covering, and you started asking patients for more. And now insurance has covered less, and you need to ask patients for more. And you have to do other services that the patient will ultimately pay for in full. So this is the emerging model right now. And if you really think that you're going to survive on just what insurances pay you, you're sadly mistaken. I said that when I was younger, we used to always think that the fight was to get included into things like insurances.
So it's your fault.
That's our fault.
Thanks
Absolutely.
a lot. Thanks.
Yeah. And I realize now that the best strategy that they have to contain and eliminate chiropractic is to let us in, but don't pay us well.
I've said it before. I'm a licensed massage therapist in our profession, and massage is exactly where chiropractic was. And there's a lot of people screaming for more inclusion in massage for insurance coverage, and I'm screaming the other way around. This is a guy who runs a billing company.
Right.
He's saying, no, don't do it.
No, don't do it. I've seen this movie before. It doesn't end well.
Yeah, right. So, but I digress. I wanted to touch quickly on, when we were talking about modifiers, some red flag modifiers. And the biggest one is this 52 modifier, which is defined as reduced service. Now, I haven't seen it a lot lately, but I have seen it abused in the past. Here's how it was abused. So what does reduced service really mean? It means that you had to shorten the timed code procedure for less than what would be clinically billable. We know, or should know, that time codes, the intra-service or time the service is actually being applied, you got to do at least 8 minutes to get in that first unit. And then you add 15 minutes of intra-service for every additional unit. So now we know that. That's just covering the basics. I've seen in audits where they say, oh, they get cute. I'm going to put a 52 modifier on the therapeutic procedure, the massage, because I only wanted to do 5 minutes and I didn't have time to do more. But the problem is, number one, therapeutic procedures like 971 codes that start with 971, you're not allowed to put the 52 modifier on there. AMA says, no, you can't do that. If it's less than 8 minutes of intra-service, it's clinically not, it's not billable. It's clinically insignificant without 8 minutes. But then I see others say, well, I put it on my attended electric stim on my ultrasound, which you can actually put a 52 modifier on modalities, the 970 codes that are timed. You can do that. The problem becomes when you do it routinely. So I'd ask you, Doc, if you're routinely putting like 2 minutes of attended stim on somebody, is that clinically significant?
It's a great question, because there are those studies that have said that 80% of a value of a modality is obtained in the first 8 minutes. So if you're doing 2 minutes, are you really doing anything?
Yeah.
My personal opinion would be you're not doing anything of any clinical significance. You're certainly doing something, but not of any true clinical significance. And what I mean by that is, why was I doing it in the first place? What was the outcome I was expecting from that particular modality? If I only do it for 2 minutes, there's not a lot to back up the fact that is an effective use of the modality.
So that's not to say that you could run into a situation where you would maybe report the 52. Like maybe the patient couldn't tolerate it after a few minutes and you decide, well, I'm going to cut this short. But
they get called out for an emergency or something like that. I mean, it happens, but it doesn't
the machine
happen.
started to smoke,
Yeah. It just doesn't happen every visit. They can't get a call from their kid, being in school, and they have to go pick them up or something every time you decide you want to do an unattended electrical stim.
Now, if compliance isn't enough to discourage you out there, docs, know this, that if the 52 modifier is used appropriately on the modality timed codes, it is also a green light for the insurance company to pay you less than the allowable, because now you've done less service.
They can do a proportional reduction.
And they do.
The fee.
A lot of them do.
Yeah.
They absolutely
If you only do 2 minutes and they require 15, which is really the true time, they require 15, then they're only going to pay you 2 minutes out of 15 for the fee.
Exactly. So that leads me into, have you noticed instead of loading up the question, I'm just going to ask you genuinely, do you think doctors and offices are comfortable asking patients to self-pay for services that are not covered by their carrier?
Yeah, the answer to that is no. They're not as comfortable as they used to be. Like I said before, it started out that was the only way we got paid, is if we asked to be paid from the patient. And over the years, it's evolved to the point now where patients are used to getting their insurances to cover everything they do. Costs of everything have gone up more proportionately. And for the most part, confrontational skills aren't what they used to be in the generations that from the past. So it's very difficult in my mind to get someone to be good at asking for money. And now you're asking for a substantial amount of money.
What is it? What you're really trying to say is these kids' parents pay for everything, so kids aren't used to asking for money.
I think, that was exactly what I was saying.
I know what you were thinking.
And there is that entitled mentality. And I don't think anybody's going to argue that, at least in the world today, there is an entitled mentality. So when you ask for money for healthcare, whoa, wait a minute. Healthcare is a right. It's not a privilege. And, to a certain degree, that may have some merit as far as emergency care and life-threatening care goes. But, there are definitely certain procedures that are not a right. And patients accept this. They accept this all the time. They pay for services that say cosmetic procedures. They'll have no problem paying for that. They'll have no problem paying for certain dental procedures. And they'll ask for thousands of dollars for this, and they'll shell it out no problem because they recognize that's not a covered service. That's a right. But somehow or another, we have been included into this mindset that everything we do is their right.
Well, they say if you could see your spine in the mirror, you'd pay a lot more to the chiropractor, wouldn't you?
Exactly. Got that hole in the middle of your tooth in the front of your face, you're going to fix it. You've got that degenerating L5, you're going to let it go until it causes you a problem. And then it becomes a service you feel is your right to be covered. And it's just not that way. There's insurance companies are trying to pay less, and chiropractors have to make a living like everyone else, which means that we need to ask more from our patients than we did, say, in the last 20 years, 25 years.
But here's the challenge. Here's one of the many things that I don't like about the system. The insurance carrier has made the provider's office the bearer of bad news. Now, yes, we train and we have our CEUs for CAs and doctors that say don't own your patient's insurance coverage. Call their coverage their coverage. Mm-hmm. When you verify benefits, explain to the patient what their insurance company is or isn't covering. The problem is you become the bearer of the bad news, and they who do they have to complain to other than the CA explaining their coverage and why? Sorry, they don't cover x-rays, or sorry, they don't cover an exam, or sorry, they don't cover this. Got to sign that, and here's what the potential cost is going to be. And it starts to look like it's mounting, and this patient's saying, wait a minute, I've got insurance, you're a network, I don't understand, why am I having to pay all this money? Right. Well, they have to explain this poor coverage to their patient, and the patient cannot distinguish the provider from the carrier in a lot of ways.
They think you are in partnership with the carrier, when the truth is you're only in partnership with the patient. The patient is in partnership with the carrier. But I can even back this up to say, from a compliance perspective, if you're having challenges with patients and what the patient and collecting the patient portion, then you might want to examine your procedures, because somewhere along the line, they should have known it long before they had to pay it. And that's actually the law now with the No Surprises Act. They're supposed to know what their fees will be before they're asked for that fee. So sure, if somebody stands there and you're checking out and they get hit with this big bill that they weren't expecting, they're going to kick back.
It really, it always leads into the question of should a doctor be in or out? We should do a podcast on that, whether they should be in or out of network on certain carriers, because oftentimes we'll get members they complain very, very legitimately and very hard about some of the carriers and the things they have to do. And it's like, well, why are you staying in network when it takes you gobs of administrative time just to get an $8 check?
Yeah. Or why are you complaining to me? It's not my insurance.
Or what's even worse, they don't know what their cost per patient visit is, and they're losing money.
And they're losing money on top of it,
Yeah.
They look at you like, why isn't my insurance covering this? And your answer should be, I don't know. Ask them, it's your insurance. Yeah. But they don't. We have put ourselves in that position where we become the mediator between the patient and their insurance, and it really shouldn't be that way. It should be clean. It should be defined. It should be just what you said, their insurance, not my insurance. And whatever they pay, they pay. Whatever they don't pay, you're responsible for. And there's nothing in between.
So to me, when we go all the way back to our original objective here, which is can you code for everything you do, it becomes really, can I report on a claim form to a carrier everything I do? And the answer is no, because it's going to depend on the coding system parameters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's AMA CPT and or the National Correct Coding Initiative, or a combination of the two, and whether you're in network or not. So are you subject to those reimbursement policies with a provider contract or not? And then are you utilizing non-covered service waiver forms? And with Medicare, perhaps the ABN, Advanced Beneficiary Notice for Maintenance Care. All of this plays into, probably highlights, puts a real spotlight on you need to make sure you get an education.
Right. And here's something that has gone out of vogue. Read your contracts.
No, forget about that. They're too big.
Too big, too much. You should know what each carrier covers and doesn't cover so that you can accurately transmit that information to the patient. You need to know these contracts. You can't be in the dark with that and then expect patients to accept whatever you say at the time they get surprised with this big bill.
Yeah. That No Surprise Billing Act. It was funny to me because some of the requirements to me are impossible. Like, you're supposed to know what's wrong with the patient before they come in the door, and you're supposed to know all the things that they're going to need before you even see them.
Oh, and this is where we get stuck as a profession because, we are the square peg in a round hole. The No Surprises Act was developed for situations that have nothing to do with chiropractic and would never happen in a chiropractic office, but they didn't carve us out when they made the rules. So we do the best we can with the rules and make them fit the best we can, with the overriding principle being just make sure your patients know what they're going to pay before they have to pay it.
I think a lot of offices are actually pretty good about that,
and they don't have problems.
Right. Before the service is rendered as ideal.
Yes. No surprises.
Yeah. From an informed consent standpoint, too, that'd be very, very helpful as far as that goes. So, looking at the overall picture of reporting services that are rendered, can or can't they be, I think we've established that there's a difference between carrier reporting and self-pay reporting, meaning asking the patient to actually pay for the service.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of good quality clinical modalities out there that patients are willing to pay for, not just the adjustment itself, of course,
right,
but for the other services as well.
And you can support the patient wanting to go and do whatever they want to do, or whoever they want to complain to try and get their services covered. That's fine. But you don't put yourself in the middle of that fight. You are not to be the mediator between the lack of insurance coverage and the carrier. That's the patient's fight. And I think sometimes offices are just too hesitant in passing the responsibility back to the patient for their own insurance.
Yeah. Or because you have this provider contract, you are the one stuck being the mediator to try to get more authorized visits.
And you really don't have any rights as the provider. And they don't really care if they upset you. They'll just give the contract to a different provider. But they do care if they upset the subscriber. So,
well, don't get me started about that, because when a patient calls member services, they're told stuff in very general terms that leads them sometimes to believe something that actually isn't true about the actual reimbursement policy. It's very annoying.
Oh, I know. Then you turn around and say, great, have that person put that in writing and send it to me.
Right.
And then it turns out that they don't, or they won't, or it's inaccurate.
Yeah, they won't.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to the same old problem. You become the messenger,
right,
the bearer of bad news.
And who's the one, and it's now your fault that the insurance isn't covered. So stay out of that fight. That's really what we're saying is if you're not if it's not part of what you are contracted to do, be very clear about what the services are, what the insurance will cover, what the patient has to cover in advance as much as possible, and remove the barrier, remove the financial barrier.
I think chiropractors are pretty good about doing that too.
We've been doing it forever.
I know.
It's where we sat before and where we have to go back to in a better way now. So
with that, the classic Benjamin Franklin quote, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
And we don't cure anything, right? It's the body that cures itself.
Yeah. See, I'm the billing guy. I was thinking more from the billing coding standpoint, but we all have our own wheelhouse.
Little BJ in there at the
Yeah,
end.
there it is.
Yeah.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
And Dr. Mark Davini. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.